Certainly at the moment we can all say with some conviction that all is not only not lost, but all is looking a bit more hopeful than ever before. So I'll begin my talk by mentioning with Republic TV. You know, this is a sad situation if the media invites ridicule. I mean, criticism I can understand, but and I hope that it doesn't put me on any no-fly list. But the reason I begin with Republic is, as I'll expound on this, is because we can laugh at it, we can ridicule it, we can make fun of it, we can not watch it, but we should not, it will be foolish to ignore it and ignore the implications of Republic TV and all the other similar clones and television channels, websites, etc. If we ignore it, we do so at our own peril. It helps us at the very least to understand what's going on and how to tackle it. So last week when the shootings happened at Jamia, when that young man went on a spree and, you know, with a large spectator audience of policemen, every channel covered it in real time, and the Republic started immediately saying Jamia protester in shootout. So Jamia protester shootout leaves us with no doubt what the implication was, and the implication was not merely that one of the Shine Bagh or Jamia protesters had broken ranks, had gone out and done something like this and shot at people, but there was a lot of subtext to it that everybody that Republic TV talks to would have fully understood, fully grasped, that he was an anti-national and that he well could be a Muslim, and if he was a Muslim, then he well could be a Pakistani, or at least a Pakistani agent. So this is no longer dog whistling anymore. Dog whistling is when you make subtle remarks, but this is not dog whistling. This is direct criticism, and it comes right in the middle of the Home Minister saying the same thing, and later, a couple of days later, the Junior Minister of Finance saying the same thing. Or, sorry, one day earlier. I'm sorry about that. So, it comes there. So, nothing surprising that Republic did this. It's nothing surprising at all. Their messaging has been full of bigotry and hate. Their messaging has been pro-government. Their messaging has been to try and portray large sections of our society, minorities included, as people who have an agenda, a treacherous agenda, and perhaps worse, because they are fundamentally the fifth column enemies of the people. So there's nothing surprising there. But then, a day later, something happened. The anchor, the star anchor and editor of the Republic TV, said words which I thought he didn't know. He said, "I'm sorry." He actually said that. He said, "I'm sorry, we apologize, this was done in real time, we hadn't had time to check, and now we find out that his name is something else." You see the loaded way in which the apology was delivered. And while we may think that suddenly Republic has discovered professionalism or ethics, or is going back and saying, "Guys, listen, we goofed, but please don't look in that direction. We are ready to apologize." But it's not so simple, because the first clip has already gone out all over the world. It's on various WhatsApp groups. The damage has been done. Everybody watching it later, 24 hours later, is not going to know, or not going to care, or not wanting to know that there was an apology. The apology comes a full 24 hours later. So the damage really has been done. And this shoot and scoot, the apology apart, is part of how the television media, the online media, the WhatsApp groups, etc. function, and we'll see later, because as you know, the finance minister said, Anurag Thakur said, that, the crowd was doing it and I was not, but the damage has been done. Even if he apologized just now, the damage has been done. So we have to understand that media complicity in what's going on is not just a matter of taking a pro-government side, rubbishing the opposition, or spreading misleading news. Remember, misleading news is very different from fake news. Misleading news may be well rooted in a genuine story, perhaps even genuine fact, but it takes you in another direction. So, which is why I say, with large numbers of followers of Republic TV here and there, of Times Now, of Aaj Tak, of Z, it would be foolish to ridicule it, only ridicule it, because we need to know how they operate. Then, soon after that, the other channels meanwhile had done whatever they had. The coverage the next day, as Geeta pointed out, I was going to mention it also, was more or less neutral. A word about neutrality, objectivity, fairness and accuracy. These are words with specific meanings. They imply a certain degree of professionalism that media ought to follow. We want to be accurate. Accuracy demands that we wait to find out before we stick our necks out to say who the protester was. And then call him out or report it. But balance does not require that you get the other side. You cannot have a debate in the editorial pages of a newspaper. You cannot have a debate on nightly television in which one person is sort of defending, is opposing, and three people are defending, and two of them happen to be neutral who are defending. You cannot have that and say that we are being balanced. You cannot have it. There is no balance or other side to saying the finance minister has said go out and shoot the traitor. There is no balance. You have to call it out. You cannot sit there and say, on the one hand, on the other hand, those days are gone. We are in a situation where we demand professional accuracy as readers and as journalists. There should be professional accuracy, but that does not mean there should be equivalence. That is completely different. Equivalence means both cannot have the same point of view. This is a fig leaf behind which many journalists have hidden for many years. And if you are on social media, you will see that many notable journalists will always have an open-ended kind of statement about something. We don't expect everyone to be on the same side, but at least when it's required, so you call it out. Why am I focusing on journalists? I mean, of course, the talk is about the media and all that, because it's my considered view, and I have thought about this a lot, having been in the profession, having watched how we have emerged, that journalists now are no longer observers, reporters, even ideologically inclined, which is in some ways understandable, but they have become complicit. Journalism in India, as it's practiced by a vast majority of people, is the enabler of what is happening today. It has actually been part of the game, not an observer, not a neutral reporter, not even on that side. I mean, when we hear the word republic and we laugh at it, it means that we've already discounted its ethics, its professionalism, etc., and its point of view. We have discounted it in our minds. Perhaps even those who love it very much, though I always wonder whether there are parents who say, "Beta, when you grow up, I want you to be like this." I've always wondered about that. But we can that part. But I am convinced that journalists are a major part of the problem, because without the foundation laid by the mass media, and not WhatsApp, not Op India, not trolling, but the mass media, the respectable mass, without that, the atmosphere created by them, this wouldn't have happened. And this did not happen since 2014. It happened before that. From 2011 and 12 onwards, when the agitations against corruption were going on, journalists started covering it in a way, in a breathless kind of way, where they clearly showed that they were taking sides. And they were not taking sides against corruption, they were taking sides for a point of view. Please understand that attacking corruption is a good thing, attacking the UPA was a good thing on facts. So it is not as though we are saying that things were much better or we should have been supportive of that, not at all. But this was being done in a particular way to create that atmosphere. So it started 10 years ago. In 2013, after the announcement was made that Mr. Modi would be the next, I would like you all at some stage to go back and look at those newspapers. They started covering him in a particularly, in a way that was building him up. I don't know how many of you recall that in 2014, when Mr. Modi went to Banaras and went to file his nomination, the reporting that was going on by some of our channels. And they were looking at the camera and talking in a kind of way that, you know, like they were fans of what was going on. So go back and have a look at it. So why did this happen? I'm told that I don't have too much time, but I'll still try to. Why did this happen? How did this happen? So it is nobody's case that the journalism practiced in India was perfect. It was not. Managements put pressure, advertisers put pressure, governments lean on managements. But what has changed is now the kind of lethal combination has emerged. A government that is ruthless in punishing and very, very generous in rewarding. Look at the number of people who are getting prime posts in companies and government, etc. So you have that on one side. You have managements which are either scared or want favors or are compromised for various reasons. As the second is, you have a journalist who are either ideologically inclined or time servers, to put it crudely, chamchas, or looking for something for themselves. So therefore, people who are, sold out, and those who are trying to do an honest job but are failing because they have no avenue. So you have this devastating combine. It's a lethal, devastating combine which has emerged because of when there's economic reasons, there's social reasons, and political and ideological reasons. And all of them have worked as a unit, and all of them have worked to create this atmosphere in which somebody reading out the preamble to the Constitution can be called a traitor. This is what we've come to. Really, when you put it down to say, standing up for your country's Constitution makes you a traitor. Just think about the horrific implications of this. Tomorrow, my child may go to her educational institute and stand there and read the Constitution, and she could be thrown into jail. This is what we've come to. So these are not ordinary times. Shaheen Bagh gives us hope, the protest gives us hope, but please understand, this is not an ordinary time. And the media has been completely, our stars, our reporters, our companies, our editor. Large sections, to be quite honest, large sections. So there are great journalists out there. So if this is the situation, what hope is there? Yes, there are websites and newspapers. Mr. Ram is here, I was honored that he stayed back. There are newspapers in Calcutta, there are newspapers in Bangalore, there are newspapers elsewhere who are doing a fine job. There are journalists doing a fine job. Yes, the government media, pro-government media has become, you can't take it seriously. I always call television channels World Wrestling Federation. We all know it's rigged, but we enjoy it. So yes, there is that they have become completely discredited. But again, I would suggest, let's not take this lightly. Let's be media savvy. Let's vote by not reading, by encouraging independent voices, and by being an independent voice ourselves. To conclude, I'll just say this, that I see no hope in the revival of credibility of Indian media. Absolutely no hope. We've gone too far down the road, and there's still a few years to go. So there is no hope. Indian media, the industry may thrive. Everyone's very proud of the fact that readership is growing. But the journalism, the practice is not going to last the independent practice is not going to last very long. The small ray of hope is a younger audience is emerging which doesn't care for television, which does not read the newspaper in the morning, and which wants completely and total fairness, including that the journalists they look up to or read demand accountability. So that audience, the children are going to now move away, and the uncles who are watching Republic TV will find that they are isolated. That's my only hope. But I would still want to end in more hope. And more hope is that when you see that the protests that are happening are attracting people from families who are pro this government, then you know that things are going to change only for the better. They will go through a lot first, but they are going to change for a better, media or no media. Thank you.